Mike Simmons has been an amateur astronomer for 40 years and loves sharing the sky with others. He joined the Los Angeles Astronomical Society in the early 1970s and served in many capacities, including 2 terms as president and 10 years on the board of directors. In 1976, he joined the staff of Griffith Observatory, where he operated the Zeiss, is that right? Zeiss 12-inch refracting telescope for the public and described the many facets of astronomy to tens of thousands of visitors. In the early 1980s, he was instrumental in founding the Mount Wilson Observatory Association, a support organization dedicated to improving the experience of visitors to the renowned observatory. His outreach efforts in astronomy broadened in 1999 when he traveled to Iran for a total solar eclipse, leading to the founding of Astronomers Without Borders in 2006. He is also a writer and photographer who has contributed to publications including Scientific American, Astronomy, and also Sky and Telescope, where he is a contributing editor. Minor Planet Simmons, number 22,294, or is that just read 22294? Yeah. Was named in his honor in 2003, in part for his varied outreach activities in astronomy. Please welcome the president of Astronomers Without Borders, Mike Simmons.
Yay. But the 4-way test is something that I really find commendable. This is the first time I've ever attended a Rotary Club meeting. But coincidentally, I recently met somebody heavily involved with Rotary International, who is talking about possibly doing collaborative programs between Rotary and Astronomers Without Borders in other countries. And we'll get into some of the things we do and why that he thought that that might be a good idea. So, as was mentioned there, let me see. So this strange-looking picture is the Great Wall of China, actually a fort over the western end out western China, close to the Mongolian border, with a totally eclipsed sun above it. So that is a total solar eclipse, and I can tell you that I give talks on these things, and I could talk about it all day and show you lots of videos and pictures, and you would still not understand what an amazing thing it is, but I'll get to that a little bit later. But this is the type of thing, as was mentioned in the intro, that took me to, it takes me often to faraway places. Now this is an eclipse I attended, but not in this particular place. This is in Africa, and this eclipse then traveled across to Turkey, where I was. But astronomers love to share what it is that they're doing with other people. And I wonder if you can, you know, look at the legs here and see if you can figure out which one is the visitor. So this is showing the partial phases of the eclipse to the locals, and this is something you'll see over and over again. Solar observing glasses being shared with locals in another part of Africa. At the location I was in Turkey, with a traditionally dressed mother and her daughter looking at the same thing. Students in Egypt also looking at the same eclipse. Then another eclipse that took place in Antarctica, a friend of mine went to, is also surrounded by the curious locals.
They dressed up for it. Nice.
Yeah. So this did take me to Iran, and the reason why this is important will become apparent. This is my own telescope, but it was people looking at the partial phase of the sun. Note that there's a special filter on the front. All these things that we're doing here, you really can blind yourself if you stare at the sun. If you look through a telescope, it won't take long at all. But these are Iranian locals that are looking at the event, and we were on a hill overlooking a small town. The street lights came on during the total phase while the sun was eclipsed. But the important thing here is that, having been a little wary of going to Iran myself as an American Jew, I thought, well, I'm not sure this is good. And it took a bit to convince my wife to go with me, because I do some more unusual things than she does. But afterwards, here, wearing my appropriately fashioned beard, gray beard at the time, for where I was surrounded by these young students who were thrusting books with pens in my hands, and I realized they wanted a souvenir, having met an American scientist, that they wanted my autograph, just because I was from the U.S. Well, this led to one of many revelations about Iran, which is, in fact, the most pro-American country I've ever gone to. When we get past the sound bites of the governments and so on, which is, in my opinion, never good on either side, and they're suffering under a lot right now. But they approach you on the street and say, "Where are you from?" "Oh, we love Americans," and there's evidence of that every place. I mean, this is in a small town. Well, it's not even a town. It's just a stop along the road, about 60 miles from the border with Afghanistan. Very different area as well. And so we see this, which is Mickey. Disney is every place. They love our culture. Selling, that's not Pepsi Cola, that's Parsi Cola. No American brands there because of sanctions. But they have their own. Other things that I found out. University, there are complaints about gender bias in the universities. The gender bias comes from the boys, because the women outnumber the men in universities 3-2, 50%. It's a huge difference. Whether or not there's a real bias, I don't think so. The sciences are also dominated largely by women, and astronomy in particular. I realized after a short time that most of them were women. So women are not there are big differences between the countries and between the cultures. And the things that happen in Muslim countries are cultural, because there have been lots of places where they don't wear hijab at all, or just a few do. In this case, they have to out in public, but I've been to parties where they come in wearing the chador, it covers everything, go into a room, come out with their party dresses and their makeup and everything. They don't care. So there's a difference between the public and the private. But there are cultural differences, there are government differences, but when I came back, I connected amateur astronomers in the U.S. with amateur astronomers in Iran, because we were all doing the same thing. And when I gave presentations, they'd say, you know, how can we help them? Because they don't have the things that we do here. So it surpassed all the other stuff that people were talking about. And it's a demonstration of that sort of thing. Let's look at some of the places that astronomy is practiced around the world. So this is a traditionally dressed Kurd in northern Iraq, looking through a telescope. I actually took that telescope to them when I visited Iraq on my second visit to the north there. But you can see, you know, some women in hijabs, some not. But it looks very much like what you'd see. Well, in this case, it's in Baghdad. I was in Baghdad earlier, but not during this time. We had a big event during the International Year of Astronomy, and you can see this is in Bangladesh, where they got involved in it. I can never remember where this country is. The girls' school in hijab with stars on her coat there, showing the pictures of Saturn. This is in Kathmandu in Nepal. A typical picture that can be taken anywhere in the world. There's another one that looks just like it. It's actually in India. Another just like it, except it's in Iran. Here we have the same type of telescope as in the first one in Iraq. But this is natives in either Peru or Bolivia. Amateur astronomers go out and share the sky with everybody. They love to do this. In fact, he has a sticker on his telescope there, which is homemade, but from the sidewalk astronomers, and that's what they do. And it could be one guy on the sidewalk showing people, in this case, the moon, or it could be a big event. This one in Argentina, where there's just crowds and crowds of people. But everybody likes to make sure that everybody gets a look. In this case, in Brazil. And the reason that people do it, and this is not an exaggeration, this is really what it's about, is this young boy taking a look through a special solar telescope, and the look on his face, the reaction of the adults, anybody looking at Saturn for the first time and other things. This is why they do it. In this case, that's taken in Romania, but it could have been any place. But there are cultural differences in how things are done. In this case, for that big event in Western India, they took an exhibition around, and you can see the kids are crowded around to learn about astronomy. They're not really as interested in the camel. I forget where this was taken, but it's in northern Africa, in the Sahara. One of the countries there. I've been to a few of those as well. Here it's in Pakistan. Here, young amateur astronomers out on the sidewalk sharing with others in, I believe that's, this is the Philippines, I think, or Vietnam, I forget, and I can't recognize the flag. So. A solar event is part of our programs in Oman, on the Persian Gulf. There are big crowds often. This is sharing with the masses of people at a school in India. But when there are special events like an eclipse, here they had over 20,000 people who attended this on the occasion of a total solar eclipse. Which, and for me, last thing I want to do is be packed into a crowd of 20,000 close personal friends during an eclipse. But I've been in some isolated places up in the Andes and things like that. So this is the popularity, and after a while you learn to see that the one common thread here is that there are people looking through telescopes or sharing with other people. Their skin color may be different, their clothes are different, the surroundings may be different, but otherwise it's the same thing. We're sharing the same sky, we're looking at the same thing. And this represents that. This is in one of the deserts of Iran, which, by the way, is an extremely mountainous country over most of it, and they grow rice by the Caspian Sea. It's, you know, very, very diverse, very different than we think of. But the night sky, you'll see the same thing if you're in the northern hemisphere, for example, in Yosemite Valley. The Milky Way from up on top of Mauna Kea. This, so all this snow that you're seeing here is in Hawaii, 13,000 feet, to the observatories up there. The Milky Way also from Easter Island. So this is in the south, and this is a panorama. It actually would go all around, you know, 180 degrees, but we can't show that here, so that's why it looks curved. But it's farther south, so you can see the Magellanic Cloud's companion galaxies to our own galaxy that are visible only in the south. Or farther south, Iguazu falls on the border of Brazil, Argentina, and Paraguay. But there's a very easy way to show how we're looking at the same things. This is a familiar scene to everybody, seeing the moon rise. Here we're seeing it rise over the Taj Mahal in Agra in India. But here over the Parthenon in Greece, over a building, multiple exposures in central Iran and Yazd, rising over the skyline of Boston. Well, okay, so this is France, and they're picky about something, so they're trying to move it off to another place, but this is a friend who actually takes a lot of serious of these things, playing with the moon. So what do we do with all this? Well, one of the things that's best is sort of what we're doing here, which is sharing what's going on in all these different places. So people want to hear about and see what's going on in other countries, in other cultures, in other places they're not used to. And my ulterior motive has to do with some of the things, one of the things in particular, the third test up here, building goodwill and better friendships. And that's the purpose, because we get to know each other this way through something that we come to with a common passion for something that is universal, has been, if you think about it, everywhere in our culture. I mean, where would our culture be if we didn't have stars? We'd have no more star ratings or other things. You see it every place. And that's true in every culture and all through time. So this is something that's universal to us. And in this case, this is a club in Morocco sharing what they are doing in a school there. And certainly Rotary could do the same thing. You're helping schools here. And I don't know if you do this with Rotary clubs and see what they're doing in other places, but you know, it would work out there. Sometimes even live events. In this case, it is, I believe that's Vietnam, and they're part of a program that they're actually interacting with the Philippines, and we had people from around the world taking part in this program here as well. So what else can you do with this besides just sharing? Well, there is astronomy and culture quite a bit as well. And we have a very robust astro arts program. This is not what I envisioned when I started this. I come from more of a science background, a science communications, public outreach, and astronomy. So this never really occurred to me. I'd seen that there are a lot of things. Astro art, we're familiar with, but so many other different things. Let me give you some examples. So some of the artwork here is direct. It's really showing what things might be like on Enceladus, for example. Mel's favorite moon of the solar system.
Because you might be able to get a hockey game going on all that ice.
I'm going to suggest to somebody that they make a poster showing somebody driving a Zamboni on
Please, thank you.
Enceladus. And other things about what would it be like if you had this view, which is entirely possible. But other things, of course, photography, like what I was showing you there. This is a photographer who's really not an astronomer. He just loves the night sky. And I like the way he likes to show people interacting with it out under the night sky. It's not an abstract thing. It's something that really makes you feel very different. This is at Crater Lake in Oregon. But if you have never been out under a truly dark sky, and most people who grew up in cities now have not been, you really have no idea what it's really like. And so you can drive a couple hours from here and see the Milky Way in a really dark sky and sort of see where we are in the universe. It's another part of astronomy is some people feel that it makes you feel small because everything is so vast. But I think most people feel that they understand where they are in the universe and how big, how much they are part of something so much bigger than the little thing that we have here and worrying about all the little things that we have. Astropoetry turns out to be a really popular thing. This is not something I expected. When somebody who was volunteering and doing some writing and editing for us, a friend I'd known for a long time, he said, you know, I write this astropoetry and I'd like to do a blog. I said, okay, it's not going to cost us anything, go ahead. It turns out to be a hugely popular thing. We're now in the middle of an annual contest for Global Astronomy Month, which is something that we do every year, that gets hundreds of submissions, adults and children from around the world. Romania is a hotbed of astropoetry. Never would have guessed. This is the Cosmic Concert. Now this is something, our Global Astronomy Month every April is something that incorporates all kinds of different programs, different organizations, and this is here, Giovanni Renzo is a composer and performer in Italy, and he decided that he wanted to do a concert every year. So he writes a new piece of music, puts together in the background still images and videos of the night sky and various things. And that is performed live and now being done in a theater in Italy with a live audience. Astro Arts competition for kids. This is something that's going on, well, this is last year's but that's also extremely popular. It goes on all around the world. These are 3 students in Ghana who, this is actually for a different program having to do with Saturn, but they love to do this, and something that, you know, I know teachers like to do as well, and a lot get them involved. I think the biggest in this is in India and Indonesia, which seem to get the most. Well, there's a third type of program which I call resource sharing, because we have so much here. That's really how we started, not only sharing what we have in terms of actual equipment and so on, but most importantly, information and knowledge. So this was, again, started by somebody outside of Astronomers Without Borders and then brought inside its telescopes to Tanzania. This is a typical classroom. They have a blackboard, the poster probably brought to them by the person who started this. They seem to have an actual floor in the classroom. They're doing fairly well. Education is the path to a bright future. It's something that they very much keep in mind and value in places where things do not come so easily. And here he is giving some lessons on telescopes to some of the kids involved in the program. Some of the older kids looking at some of the stuff on the computer. We have another program which I think is really innovative. It's not really just about astronomy. What we do it is, but I think this is something that should be done more. Big impact giving, or BIG. So here's something where there is a program, existing program in Kenya, but they wanted to do astronomy, and they had people who were capable of doing it, but they had no telescope. So we crowdfund for this. We tell people, these guys need a telescope. We need $500. And $500 is the limit. It's the max. We get this all the time. I just had one today from, I can't remember which country, but I get this all the time where they're looking for something small. So one time on a trip to Brazil, I took a specialized solar telescope to Rio, where somebody picked it up and took it to the Amazon, where they were doing astronomy in the schools there, but they didn't have a solar telescope, so they couldn't do it. And we got that for $500. So this idea, I think, is a really good one that should be spread around more. I call it microfunding for these small things for existing programs. And there were many things here, including, I can't see it that well from here, Guatemala, a radio show about astronomy in Haiti, and so on. We sell a little telescope. This is really for fundraising, but this is often what we do get for the clubs and schools that need them. But this is an example of, no, I can't remember the name of it right now, where corporations do good things for nonprofits, and it's a collaboration. And this is Celestron, the world's largest telescope manufacturer. And so they get this manufactured in China. They put our design on it, and they front all the money and bring it over and everything else, and they use their actual cost and charge us every time they ship one out for us. So it's extremely cheap. It's become very popular. We're the only ones that have it in the United States. So that's a fundraising method, but we can also supply it to different places very, very cheaply.
I'm just going to jump in and say that's what's going to the 3 older schools, and this is where we got it through Astronomers Without Borders. Sorry.
No, I appreciate that. I'd forgotten that. I knew I had a reason why I had this in here. And it's very popular. It's a very good one for kids. Very easy to use. Very transportable. So I've met very young kids that use this telescope, and teachers too. Because the problem is teachers don't know anything about astronomy generally. So you have to teach them, you have to make it as easy as possible. Well, we take advantage of eclipses. So here was an eclipse taking place in 2012, I think, going across Africa. And this is a very important eclipse. There was a lot of publicity, and the teachers there wanted to do something with it, especially the ones in the path there where they are going to have a total solar eclipse, which is an event of a lifetime. But they didn't have ways to safely get the kids involved. And you have to have those filters. So what we did was we again crowdfunded. We asked people to donate glasses at $1 a piece, which included getting them over to Africa and everything else, so that we could get them over there so the teachers and the educators and the people in the system could distribute it to get the kids out there, because this is an inspiration. Astronomy is something that we use, like in telescopes to Tanzania and here, call it a gateway science. There isn't anything that you can't connect to science in some way. Astrobiology, even, because we're talking about life on other planets, and chemistry and geology and physics, and there's music and everything else in cultural as well. So if it's something that the students love doing and that teachers like learning about in order to be able to teach and like doing it, then that's the way to get them involved, because everybody, you can have a physics lab or a chem lab or something, not everybody's going to be thrilled by it. The other thing is that in Africa, after they do this, they see the eclipse and they start thinking about, so why does the moon cover the sun? Are they the same size? What is going on? Well, they don't have labs for the most part, but they have the astronomy lab overhead. And they don't need much except to know how to use it. And you can spin off from there just about anything else. So we had students across Africa using those glasses. We did the same thing here recently for an annular solar eclipse across Africa. Annular just means the moon does not quite appear big enough to cover the sun, so it's an annulus. Let's call it a donut eclipse. It's a little different than the total. And then we had another one in South America. We sent glasses down there just last month to Patagonia. All 4 schools down there. Well, okay, now we come to the big event coming up here. This path, this is actually showing, I have to step away here, yeah. This is August 21st. There will be a total eclipse in the United States for the first time since 1979, the first one across the whole continent since 1918. Eclipses happen every 1.5 to 2 years somewhere in the world, total eclipses. But if you want to see a total eclipse, you have to be in that narrow band in the middle there. And that can be 60 miles wide or so, or less. So the magnitudes that you're seeing here indicate how thick the partial will be, and you can see from the little suns there. So we're going to have what's called a pretty deep partial here, about 70%. That's interesting. 80%, a little more interesting. 90%, that's pretty cool. 98% is really very interesting. But it's not 98% of a total eclipse, because you still have part of the sun showing. When the shadow of the moon, which is what's happening here, sweeps across you and the sky goes dark, street lights go on, night animals come out, but it's light all the way around the horizon because you're in this little tiny tip of a cone of light. The stars come out, the corona of the sun is seen, which you can only see otherwise really well from space. It is, and see, I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it, and I've seen 7 of these, but it makes my skin crawl because it is an experience that turns your whole world upside down. And I can tell you, it's scary first time you do it. Because nothing's right. Everything is really backwards. And so something primal says, this is really not good. But it's amazing. So, 98%, you see a lot of cool things. 100%, that's totality. Almost seeing a total eclipse is like almost winning the lottery. You know, it just doesn't count. So if you're 100 miles out of that path and say, well, it's 99%, 99% is good. No. You're getting a 99% partial eclipse, you're getting 0% of totality. So I'm selling this to you now as a chance of a lifetime. There are those of us who get hooked and travel around the world whenever we can. I've been to 7 of these. I know people have been to more than 30. But I can't afford to do that. So I would say, and now I'm going to give you a little information. Oh, we're doing, okay, before we go back to this. We're doing an educational program. This has been funded by Google. We are going to be getting these little spectroscopes. These take the light of the sun, break it up so you can see these little dark lines, they're the fingerprints of the chemicals in the solar atmosphere. This is how you can tell, just looking through a simple thing like this made out of cardboard and one little slide that goes in it called the diffraction grating, what the sun is made of. And what you're seeing is certain chemicals that have been identified in the laboratory under a certain pressure, certain temperatures, and so on. So you can see, hey, I see this set of lines. It's like identifying fingerprints. Well, that matches this. That's what's going on, and that's how we know what the temperature is. Nobody went out there and, you know, with a thermometer and stuck it in there. But we know what's going on there, and we can see different levels in different ways, different wavelengths, and so on. But this also can be used in other ways. So this is our idea, again, of turning the eclipse into inspiration for science of all kinds. We're making a curriculum specifically for this, using light to look at biology and all these other things. So that was funded by Google, and it's a great thing, and when we get through with this, we'll have materials to use in other countries around the world too. Now, if you want to see a total solar eclipse, these are the closest places to go. That's the shadow at various times. So you can go up into eastern Oregon, which is going to be jam-packed with people from all over the world. Across Idaho, into Wyoming. I'll be in Casper, Wyoming, if it's clear there. Otherwise, I'll be driving like a maniac down the highway, trying to get in a clear area, which is very close to what's called the center line. We're going to be within the, the middle 2/3. It's good enough. You don't want to be right on the edge. So this is close. Probably many, if not all of you, have been to some of these areas before. Also goes across it through Nebraska, Missouri, South Carolina, and goes off into the ocean. The weather prospects are better for us in the Northwest. So that's a big program that we have right now. And there are a lot of spin-offs we hope to do. We're going to try and get sponsorship in a lot of ways to be able to do these spin-offs to help the students around the country. Now NASA, Google, lots of others, and everywhere down to little astronomy clubs are gearing up for this. And there are millions of eclipse glasses being given away. We're being given 100,000 to give away, but we have to raise money for the spectroscopes. We're going to help the schools to raise money locally and so on, and everything we can do to get all these things to them, because the eclipse is inspiration for STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. But even NASA and everybody else that's doing it, they're trying to get people to be aware of the eclipse and do something for it. But they're not building on it afterwards. So that's our place. That's what we're doing. And we hope to spread that to other countries afterwards. So, did it go the wrong way? So, you're all familiar with the saying to think globally and act locally, because that's what you can do. You want to make a difference in the world, in the universe that we live in. But you can act most effective locally. But in fact, what we do is to think locally. What are we doing here? And how can we share that with the rest of the world? We have the ability now technologically. Most of what we do is online, and that's where we raise money if we have to do something in the real world. So I like to turn it around and think about what can we do here and how can we spread that to others. And I think that's what Rotary does as well, because it's taking what all the clubs are doing and using that to build on for international programs. So that neat little segue. That's what I have, and if we have time for questions, I'll be glad to take them or to sit and chat once we're done.